immigration policy, that we have to have faith in our own values, the values that gave rise, say, to the idea of equal rights for women, to accept that the rise of that idea was something perhaps distinctively Western, and that we need to teach those, we need to have enough faith in those presumptions to teach them to newcomers. That strikes me, the probability that we're going to do that strikes me as extraordinarily low, if that's what's necessary, because I don't think, the last time I was in Holland, I was struck by the degree to which all the Dutch people that I talked to seemed to accept the proposition that they didn't really have much of a culture at all, that there was nothing particularly special about Dutch culture, or perhaps that it even existed, and certainly didn't feel that it was of sufficient quality to impose on other people. I think and how do you address, when you're criticized for being a neo-colonist, let's say, you're in such a strange position because of your where you were born and how you immigrated, and do you think that there is a danger in the Western assertion of primacy of value, for example, and is that such a danger that it mitigates against any attempts to assimilate immigrants, for example?
I think the way you started with, the bus arriving on time, and for something like that to happen, that a society that is hyper-organized, and you want to call that Western, I'm happy to call it Western, right? Some people just call it modernity. I don't know. Some people think it was just lucky. I think there's a bit of everything. But if you then look at societies where the bus doesn't come on time, that is one factor. And I just really like the time factor. In fact, we should just have one podcast only about that, things happening on time and in a predictable fashion for millions of people. How do you organize that? And I think that sort of makes Western society distinct from societies that haven't managed to find a way of dealing with time effectively and efficiently. The second thing is what we've been talking about all this time, and it's violence. That is suppressing male violence and channeling it so that it has other outlets instead of disrupting society and it being used against women. The third one I would say is money. And it is for societies to have these large surpluses where they can actually take care of the weak. They can afford compassion. Compassion is not just something you say, I feel sorry for you. We pay taxes so that we can pay for for the dispossessed. We can pay for their medical care. We can pay for their housing. And that, again, greatly enhances stability and social stability. And then finally, it's sex, which is not something that you can spontaneously have whenever, whatever, again, it's not perfect, but compared to some other societies, unwanted diseases, unwanted babies, rapes and sexual violence, all of that in Western societies seem to be really different. Now, you take those four factors and you say, we're going to bring people in people from societies who don't have that. Should we bring them into this, call it forced assimilation or just socialization or whatever you want to call it? But if we fail to do that and the number gets ever bigger, then we are going to have unstable societies. We're going to have, and the Dutch can say, and I've had the Swedes do the same thing. I've had Germans say the same thing to me, French. There is nothing uniquely different from my culture. Maybe because they take it for granted, because it's never been challenged. They all look alike, they think alike. And then one day...
Well, you do take whatever's around you all the time for granted. And it's clearly the case that we don't understand our own cultures, let alone other people's cultures.
You don't understand what you don't understand what you have until you don't have it anymore.
And what have you experienced the West as having, the values that should be transmitted to the immigrant population that we're inviting in, what's crucial in your estimation? And how do you communicate it? I know you tried to do that when you wrote Infidel.
Right. And I'm trying to do it again in this book. And I've tried to do it in Heretic. I try to do it in every book in using different sentences, but pretty much saying the same thing, which is before I came to the Netherlands, I knew of the concept of freedom, but to me it was a dream. It wasn't something you had. So when I came to Holland, I was stunned, of course, in a good way. Mm-hmm. I felt safe as a woman in any kind of space. That's not something I was used to. I was told that I had equal rights before men. So when the man that my father married me off to, when he came to claim me, the woman at the asylum seeker center told me, you don't have to go with him. You can call the police. And we called the police, and I didn't go with him.
Right. I can remember how stunned you were, your account in Infidel, that the police were actually there to help you and that you could rely on them.
You can rely on them. And she explained, and then I said, what can I do in return? And she said, you don't have to do anything in return. This is the law. And that was the law when it was enforced. And again, that is something, she was just as shocked as I was. Because so there are places where they do this sort of thing, and it is, oh my goodness. So I can give you a whole list of things that I didn't have, and I even took it for granted that I didn't have those things. And then come to free societies, and then you can read as many books as you want. You can befriend whoever you want. You can sleep with whomever you want. You won't find, you might be rejected from this job or that job, but it is taken for granted that you can find your own employment, and if you do, you can keep the money that you make from that. I've been saying the same things over and over again. You can associate with whoever you want. Again, in our conversation when we started, Ali, I told you some of these things are changing, and they're not changing just because of external factors like Islam or immigration. They're changing from within, because a lot of us, people who are born and raised here for generations, have decided that they are disappointed in modernity. They call themselves postmodernists or critical race theorists or whatever you name it, but this is ideology that's taking on. You can see it in newsrooms, in publication houses, tech world, and there is an alarming rejection of the fruits of modernity, of free speech, of all the things that I was impressed with when I came to the West.
So you contrast an Islamic attitude towards